Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking on an assumption that is so deeply woven into the fabric of our society that we rarely even question it.
Right.
And that's the concept of what human maturity looks like and, when it supposedly just stops for certain people. We've taken a stack of sources that challenge a really profound and deeply ingrained societal injustice.
It really is.
This all centers around the idea that artistic individuals simply stop developing. So we're diving into what the material calls the myth of Peter Pan.
Such a powerful phrase for it.
It is. It's this insidious, enduring notion that autistic people remain perpetually fixed in a state of childhood, a fixed point that's, well, convenient for everyone else's narrative.
That's exactly right. The mission here is to really unpack the material that actively dismantles this myth. It shows us a vastly different truth.
Okay.
We're going to look at how autistic development, continuous learning, and even complex play, how they mature into these absolutely sovereign and intricate forms of adulthood.
Even when the world just refuses to see it.
Even when the mainstream world actively refuses to chart or even acknowledge them.
And the tone of these sources is brilliantly provocative because they argue this isn't just, a simple misunderstanding.
No, it's much deeper.
They claim it is an institutional failure and a deliberate, almost willful refusal to see the evolving, grown nature of autistic life.
I mean, they offer this really stark assessment, something like, they like to pretend we never grew.
And that refusal to witness growth is exactly where we have to begin this whole investigation. Huh. Okay, so let's unpack this core concept they name, the Peter Pan spell. How does the source material describe this mechanism of society freezing autistic individuals in childhood?
Well, you said it. It's a mechanism of convenience.
Right.
By establishing a baseline very early on, say at age 5 or 7, society can essentially declare, this is it. This is the fixed state.
And what's the consequence of that?
The consequence of this spell is that clinical and educational experts, they start using terms like developmental as if it signifies a permanent cul-de-sac.
A dead end.
Exactly. The focus shifts from fostering growth to just maintaining a controlled, unchanging environment. And if you think about the physical environments this creates, the source material paints a really vivid picture. They call it a perpetual preschool.
Perpetual preschool? Wow.
Yeah. We're talking about rooms perpetually equipped with tiny chairs, an insistence on soft colors, and these laminated, rigid schedules.
All designed for minds they stopped trying to understand decades ago.
Right. It's an environment that's built for stasis, not for transformation.
And the myth persists because there's this powerful and coercive trade-off built into it, right? Autistic people are granted this very specific, narrow form of societal acceptance, this innocence, but only if they forfeit their curiosity.
And their autonomy, their agency.
Their agency especially. They can exist in this childlike state as long as they don't ask complicated adult questions or, expect real independence. But who does that really benefit?
It benefits the system.
Yeah.
The system finds certainty and control so much easier than complexity and evolution. But the reality presented in the sources, it just completely shatters this fixed view. The counter-narrative is so liberating.
What does it say?
It says autistic individuals are grown, growing, grown again. They don't stop. They are actively building universes out of patterns long after they were declared finished.
Stimming through galaxies, as the text puts it.
Yes, that beautiful line. Learning the intricate topography of our own nervous systems in ways that these conventional rigid metrics, they just can't possibly hold or measure. And this brings us to a really crucial point about institutional failure.
Okay.
The trouble isn't just clinical misunderstanding. The systems themselves are structurally built on the assumption that there's nothing beyond childhood to even understand.
So that's where the money goes.
That's where all the research funding flows. Whole research agendas cluster almost exclusively around early intervention in preschool settings.
And the rest of the lifespan.
Yeah.
The 70, 80 years of adulthood.
It's treated as a rounding error, a mere rounding error.
That is such a striking way to think about resource allocation. One of the sources puts it, and I'm quoting here, "Children inspire donors. Adults demand rights. Guess which one attracts the grants?"
It's cynical, but it feels true.
It does. So if policy and funding are only focused on children, what are the sharp, practical consequences of this erasure on adult autistic life?
Oh, the consequences are severe, and they're multifaceted. If you're perpetually imagined as a child, Your adult name literally disappears from policy and service discussions after you turn 12.
It just vanishes.
Vanishes. And more intimately, people, whether it's family, support workers, system administrators, they feel perfectly comfortable owning your life.
What does that look like?
They'll script your decisions, they'll police your relationships, and they'll just hover over your desires and needs because they don't see a full adult capable of making complex choices. So autonomy is just fundamentally undermined. The source material notes that adult complexity, especially around things like relationships and sexuality, is often just dismissed.
It's seen as an impossibility.
An impossibility, exactly. And then economic rights, the ability to work, to manage your own money, to live independently.
Optional extras.
They get relegated to the status of optional extras that somebody has to grant you, not inherent rights that you deserve.
Now, to understand this, the material offers a really useful analytical framework. It's called the power-threat meaning lens. For anyone listening who's unfamiliar, can you explain what that is?
Sure. The Power Threat Meaning Lens, or PTML, is a framework that suggests distress and certain behaviors are often meaningful responses to social power, to threats, to your circumstances.
So it's not about what's wrong with you.
No, it shifts the focus entirely. It asks, what happened to you? And how are you surviving this? It's not about finding an intrinsic mental deficit.
And that reframing is so essential here. The sources apply it brilliantly. They show that what the traditional gaze calls deficits is actually survival.
Right. Strategies developed to navigate a hostile world.
And what they call behavior.
Is simply a nervous system advocating for itself. It's expressing a need that language couldn't capture.
Exactly. And that intense, deep focus that clinicians often pathologize as fixation.
When you look at it through the PTML, that becomes devotion, pattern recognition, craft, and mastery.
It's a sophisticated pursuit of knowledge.
It absolutely is. And this is the core intellectual reframing. Play isn't immaturity. Movement isn't regression. Silence isn't absence.
They're all languages.
Fluent, adaptive, intensely alive languages. But the infantilizing gaze translates every single authentic act of meaning-making into a malfunction, just because it doesn't fit the approved linear script of maturity.
That leads us right to the fallacy of linear growth. I mean, the systems that impose this Peter Pan spell, they operate as if human development is just a simple staircase that ends when you turn 12 or 18.
A very rigid, fixed blueprint.
The source material challenges that completely. How is the actual autistic path of growth described?
It's described as a dynamic process, not a staircase at all. Growth happens in spirals, in loops, in recursions.
So not a straight line.
Not at all. It's not a straight line toward one predefined end state. It grows more like weather, or like stories that constantly revise themselves with every new layer of experience and pattern integration.
So we're talking about an entire lifetime of integration, not just a fixed period. This nonlinear view must drastically change how we think about communication development, too.
Oh, completely.
It's not a ladder you climb once and then you're done.
Precisely. Communication isn't a fixed ladder or some predetermined stage 6 finish line.
It's a constellation.
A constellation, a vast web of points connected by movement, memory, attention. We keep integrating new data and rewriting our understanding across decades. The goal isn't mastering a single standardized dialect.
The goal is coherence.
Coherence, self-knowledge, and effective connection within your own unique system.
And crucially, for non-speaking autistic adults, the world pretends that development has just stopped. The sources state it so clearly. Non-speaking is not non-growing.
But the world pretends that silence is stagnation.
Yeah, because adulthood, in our cultural mythology, it requires a very specific kind of sound, which is spoken language.
And this is such a huge misunderstanding. The actual forms of growth are happening constantly for non-speakers.
But measured differently.
Measured not in outdated communication milestones, but in coherence, self-knowledge, and emotional integration. Growth happens through resonance, texture, the flicker of shared attention.
It's visible.
It's visible through typing, tapping, using AAC, and it's visible in something as subtle as the long, slow exhale that means I trust you enough to be real in this moment.
Wow.
So autistic adulthood is defined by this long-form emergence, where meaning is slowly and deliberately stitched together from pattern and sensation over decades.
Let's circle back now to play, because the sources identify play as the first language for autistic people.
Right, often preceding words and pictures.
So if play is absolutely essential for initial sense-making, for emotional logic, for relational timing, why on earth would society assume that this fundamental engine of learning just shuts off in adulthood?
I think they assume it stops because they confuse the form of play with its function. That's the crucial insight.
Okay, explain that.
Play doesn't stop. It evolves. It matures. But when adults engage in play, experts often see it as a contradiction, a kind of regression.
But the sources see it as expansion.
This expansion, exactly, it becomes richer, deeper, and infinitely more intricate. It's a honed, textured continuation of curiosity applied to really complex systems.
And the examples the sources provide of this adult autistic play are just fantastic. I mean, this isn't just about playing with toys.
Not at all.
It becomes complex world-building, entire universes meticulously spun from lore, pattern, physics, memory. This is serious intellectual work.
It's the ultimate expression of sophisticated pattern recognition. It involves this intense creative immersion that totally dissolves industrial time constraints.
And it can manifest physically, too.
Yes. The movement and rhythm, the way a body engages in stimming or rocking, not as a meaningless take-it, but as an act of regulating.
Of rocking itself into coherence.
Moving with the internal weather.
Exactly. It also shows up in these hyper-specific fandoms, complex systems, detailed collections. What the sources call a cartography of joy, mapped in detail, they dismiss as obsession.
Right, because the outside world has forgotten what it feels like to love something without reservation.
Without apology.
Absolutely. And think about sensory attunement as a mature form of play. It's not just rudimentary sensory input, it's deep engagement.
Like running a specific fabric through your fingers.
Yes, because it speaks a certain language to you. Or standing under a shower of leaves because the sound and the texture create a symphony of regulation.
These are active, complex engagement.
Not passive behaviors.
What's so fascinating here is that the sources reveal there's a distinct political nature to autistic joy and play. Why is society so quick to pathologize this deep, immersive engagement?
It's because play threatens deeply held societal structures. It threatens the structures built on the Protestant work ethic and industrial time discipline.
Which demand what? Productivity?
Constant output, maximum productivity, and above all, predictability. Deep, focused, non-productive joy is seen as time stolen from the machine.
And that's where the double standard is just laid bare. We see this constantly in the neurotypical world, when adults get into complex, immersive activities.
Like fantasy sports leagues.
Fantasy leagues, high-level cosplay, mastering an obscure programming language on weekends. It's applauded, it's passion, it's balance, it's intellectual enrichment.
But when autistic adults engage in that same depth of focus or they build these elaborate internal fantasy systems, it's immediately pathologized.
It's labeled fixation regression.
Or worse, it's used as proof of failure or justification for more clinical intervention.
So it's not the activity itself.
No. The underlying issue is the system seeking to control whose pleasure is permitted, whose self-actualization is allowed to continue without correction. Autistic play is described fundamentally as a quiet rebellion.
An act of resistance.
An act of resistance against the forces that demand full conformity and domestication.
So if play is a form of resistance, let's shift to reclaiming it. Reclaiming play is something sovereign and as praxis, a practical application of liberation.
It's a political refusal to measure your inherent worth by what you produce in a capitalist context.
And it functions as healing, too.
Critically, it functions as healing and regulation. Play is framed as the necessary antidote and soft revolution against the effects of coercive therapies.
Therapies that taught them their instincts were wrong.
That their joy was suspicious, their natural movement was wrong, that their instincts couldn't be trusted. Every moment of sensory wonder, every deep dive into a system is an act of neurological restoration and self-trust.
And again, for non-speakers, this play becomes language itself. The sources show how movement can become vocabulary.
Rhythm becomes relational timing.
And creative immersion, drawing, building, typing, arranging, that becomes a narrative, a historical record.
It's a fluent, embodied, non-standard grammar.
This creates such a beautiful and unique shape for autistic community that's often invisible to the outside world.
Because it doesn't rely on constant, loud verbal exchange.
Right. It looks like shared hyperfocus, where two or more minds just click into the exact same high frequency, working silently on a common pattern.
It looks like rhythmic co-regulation, the subtle mirroring of breath or sway where just being present together is the conversation.
And crucially, it looks like silent companionship, where explicit, pressure-filled verbal conversation is entirely optional.
But the closeness is absolutely not diminished.
That's a fundamentally different model of human relationship.
Absolutely. The joy found within these communities is very specific. The sources call it a crow-like and glint-eyed joy.
I love that.
And it's expressed through small, resonant offerings. They call them community treasures. These are tangible proofs of connection built on shared patterns and genuine interest.
And the sources detail these little gifts so beautifully. They really capture the texture of this unique connection.
What are some of them?
Things like a specific line from a much-loved book, a perfect music loop, a shiny pebble that catches the light just so.
A surprising fact about deep-sea hydrothermal vents.
A perfectly composed photo of moss, a complex diagram of a fictional magic system, or even, charmingly, a rock shaped like a potato.
It's that constellation of resonant offerings that ultimately says, I am here with you, I know your language, and I see you.
So the core conclusion here.
The core conclusion we have to take away is that autistic adulthood is a realm. It's vast, it's full of nuance, and it's defined by dignity, continuous curiosity, and integrity.
Maintained through lifelong learning and play.
The development was always happening in spirals and constellations across decades, even when the world forgot to look for it once the flashcards were put away.
And the myth collapses, not because growth stopped, but because growth happened in these profound, complex ways they just never bothered to chart. So if adult life is truly defined by the capacity for complex inquiry, self-knowledge, and the willingness to learn and revise oneself, this material raises a critical final thought for you, the listener. How many other forms of adult play in all communities, whether it's deep fandom, sensory pursuit, collaborative world building, are being pathologized or dismissed simply because they don't conform to industrialized metrics of maturity and productivity? What knowledge are we missing when we stop studying growth in favor of simply judging it?